Good afternoon, welcome. My name's Evan Amayo. I work at Palmetto Avionics, and we're sitting in my Mooney M20F right now. I was gonna do a video flying today, going over different failures that you could potentially have with this system. I'm gonna be doing it by pulling the breakers systematically to show different possible failures that you could see and how the system reverts and to see the redundancy in the system. A lot of customers are worried about going to a full glass system like this simply because they're worried what happens if one of these screens goes down. What happens if I lose my PFD? Will the autopilot still work? Will the GPS still operate properly? So we'll go through some of these things and hopefully give you a little more reassurance on the equipment. I've had this in the airplane now for 300 hours, haven't had a single issue. This system is very stable. With regards to old avionics for steam gauges, with those systems, the weakest link is going to be the vacuum pump, the vacuum system. Those things are very unreliable. I think if you get 400 hours out of a vacuum pump, you're doing really well. Those are a system that is extremely unreliable versus this that has a very high reliability. One thing that a lot of people don't think about is some of the weak links in the entire aircraft, and one would be your charging system. So your avionics are only going to be as good as your charging system, and then if the charging system goes down, your battery. So having a healthy battery, having a well-maintained charging system is extremely important to reliability of all your equipment. Now, that being said, I have run this equipment down. It will run down to about 6 volts. So, and before the screens go black, which is amazing. I'm not saying you'll get full usability of everything, but it is remarkable how low a voltage these screens will run at. The G5 has a minimum 4-hour backup battery, so if everything went offline, it's going to run for a minimum of 4 hours, and I hope you can find an airport in 4 hours. We're going to go through some of the systems. I'm going to show how the redundancy works if the attitude goes bad, if the ADAHRS, which is in this airplane, the GSU-25, goes offline. The G5, within 5 seconds, is going to revert all of this back to running off of the G5's ADAHRS, which is going to be, that's its attitude reference and air data system. Now, the other thing, which these are all tied together, air data. Air data comes from the static lines, the static system, which is, there's little ports on the side of your airplane, and the pitot tube. If you get a bug in the pitot tube on takeoff, it's going to kill this just like it's going to kill your steam gauges. So, you know, there are some areas that it doesn't matter. They're going to be the same reliability. And we're counting on the static system for legacy equipment and modern equipment to work properly. So here I've got my breakers. I'll be able to pull the breakers to test equipment. We'll do that in the air, and I'll show you how it works.
Visibility 10. Sky condition clear. Temperature 20 Celsius.
Landing height system ready.
Minus 01 Celsius. Altimeter 3020. Remarks. Density altitude 1,100.
So we just departed a busy pattern. We're going to climb up to 4,000, 4,500 so we can stay out of the way of the pattern. There are 4 airplanes in the pattern right now with me, one turning downwind. So we'll climb up and do some of these.
Greenwood traffic, Sears number 57 Tango uniform. I've got the traffic in the downwind in sight.
Greenwood traffic, Mooney 733 X-ray departing the pattern. We'll be climbing to 4,000 and will remain approximately 5 miles north of the field, maneuvering. So there's several different scenarios you could have with failures. One, probably the most likely, this has happened to me, you have an alternator fail. One thing that I do really like about this equipment is not only do you have the factory set warnings on all of the gauges, but you can also set your own warnings. So for instance, for CHTs, I have a yellow caution above 400 degrees, so I can keep an eye on if something goes out of parameter before it gets critical. But also, say your alternator goes out and you're not really paying attention. Well, you can set the alternator, in my case, I think I've got mine set, if it goes below 12 volts or 12.3 or somewhere in there, it'll start flashing at me. If it goes above, so if I get a runaway voltage, which is less likely but possible, it also will warn me. I've got warnings set up for every critical engine setting, so if there's something that fails, it is going to show up. It's not only going to show up on the screen, but it'll give me an oral alert in my headset, something that the battery gauges don't do, which is really nice to have. I'm going to climb up to 4,500. So now we're flying along straight and level at 4,500 feet. I'm going to close the cow flaps, and cruise checklist is complete. I have the screen set the way that I normally fly. Sometimes I will have the PFD on full screen, so it shows up like this. And I've got, during transition, takeoff, transition, landing, I'll leave this screen with the engine information up. If I turn it to something else, like traffic in this case, then you get this tape of your instruments, which is the standard tapes. I changed, and I'm going to change it back, but I've got, this is a turbocharged airplane, so I've got my turbo inlet temperature. I'm going to change this back to the graph down here, but I don't have it set right now. So I've got traffic, I've got my map over here. I can change this to whatever I feel like. So a lot of different pages I can have. I can make this full screen as well, so I can have it full screen. So there's my chart. So I got a full screen chart right now with my airplane flying along it. So there we go. This is everything working properly. This is the G5. Everything shows everything shows everything. So if I turn this Colesman window button, then it turns it everywhere. So, which is kind of neat. You put it back so my autopilot doesn't wig out. I've got the traffic on this page. I've got my little map on this page. And I'm going to make a turn so we don't get too far away from home. All right, so let's say if we had an alternator failure, which I've had, like I said, I've had before, what I did was I turned off the I turned off COM 2. You know, don't need COM 2. I turned it off. And you could turn off the MFD, even though it doesn't really pull a lot of power. Right now, if I go full screen again, you can see 2 amps is all I'm pulling right now. So not a lot. If I pulled the alternator breaker, so in this case, if I pulled my alternator breaker, it would, which I believe is this one. Let's see what happens. Alright, so my alternator has just failed. My voltage is dropping, and I'm pulling 12 amps. This is a very efficient airplane, so I'm only pulling 12 amps. Everything's working, nothing really cares. So let's see, what happens if I turn off my COM 2? So COM 2 is turning off. I could also turn it off from the breaker here, but I just turned it off from there. So 11, so that didn't pull very much. I've now lost my COM, but we were gonna do that. What else could I pull? Well, I could pull the MFD. Let's see what happens when I pull the MFD. Okay, my MFD just failed. Oh no. So here in a second. It normally takes 3 to 5 seconds for everything to come back. Now my engine information's over here. And I can click on it, and now I've got all my engine information. So I'm down to 9. So I lost another 2 amps. So each one of these screens is apparently pulling 2 amps. What else can I pull? Well, I could turn off my anti-collision light and my strobes. And that didn't pull a lot. I've got LED lights on this whole airplane, so not a lot of function on this airplane. And all the switches are off. Let me turn the airplane again, so we'll turn to the east. So airplane's still flying fine, autopilot's working, we're still at 12.3 volts, so I'm not into the warning zone yet. So if the alternator had failed, other than my light being on up here, I wouldn't necessarily know anything. I do have a message saying that the comm is down. Okay, so we know the comm's down. All right. So I'm down to 7 amps. I have a 35 amp hour battery. So I could probably on a beautiful day like today, where it's just gorgeous outside, I could probably continue this flight on for another hour, and I've got manual gear in this airplane. So, you know, I got manual flaps. Not really an emergency in this case. So pretty neat. Now, if I did turn this display off, I would lose my engine information, which I can fly the airplane without that. I'd rather not, but I could. All right, I'm going to turn the alternator back on. Let's see what it charges up to. So there it goes. So we're charging back again. And I'm going to turn the MFD back on. And I'll turn the comm back on as well. So there, we're coming online. Look at all the traffic out there right now. Okay, let's say we have let's say we have a magnetometer, not a magnetometer failure, but let's say we have a GSU, an Adahars failure. So down here is my Adahars breaker. So if I pull this breaker, nothing happens. The reason that nothing happens in this aircraft is there is a backup power source of a sword. It's not really a backup, it's just a capacitor bank. Over here, this 15 amp breaker is the GAD 27. This is required for airplanes that are 14 volt that have EIS engine. So it prevents the screens from going down if there's a momentary loss of power, say when you're cranking the airplane up. So if I pull this 15 amp breaker, now things are going to start happening. Okay, my autopilot just kicked off. I lost the transponder. I lost the transponder because the transponder is being remote controlled by the GSU in this airplane. And it's a remote transponder. Alright, I re-engage the autopilot. Alright, I've got a bunch of failures now. You see here? I've got AHARS revert, ADC, which is the air data computer, revert. AHARS fail, ADC fail, AOA fail. So all of those failures resulted from me pulling those 2 breakers. Now the airplane is flying off the G5 information. All the backbone of this is driving all of the rest of the system. So pretty neat. The only thing that's freaked out right now is my transponder. May be working, the power is still going to be supplied to the transponder, but I have no remote control of the transponder. It should still be getting GPS because it's getting GPS from the 355. Alright, let's make another turn here so we can get the sun out of our eyes. Okay. Okay, so that's another failure. Wasn't really a big deal. I never even lost anything on the screen here. It just, the autopilot disengaged. I had to hit the autopilot button again to re-engage it. Anytime there is an AHRS failure, you will lose, the autopilot will disengage. So that is something that will occur. All right, let's see, let's have the worst possible problem, the PFD going off. The PFD is also protected by the GAD27, which I still have pulled. So I'm going to pull the breaker for the PFD. Okay. So this will be a big problem. This would suck. Pretty much instantly over here, we get our reversion. And the autopilot disengaged again, but so now my PFD is on the MFD side. I've got nothing on this side, so my PFD is sitting on the wrong side. But I still have the G5 operating, and I had to re-engage the autopilot. But everything's still working. Let's see the message here. Yeah, it's not happy. So we kind of, we're making it unhappy. It still says all of the things that that we've got. We're running on backup. We've lost COM1. COM1 is communicating through the PFD display. COM2 is going through the MFD. For redundancy, there are also redundant paths for the engine information. So there is, the engine information is on the CAN bus, which is the backbone communication for the entire system. It also has a backup RS-232 communication. So if the CAN bus goes down, then it's going to automatically, without you knowing anything, revert to the backup communication line. All right, so all of that's working. So let's re-engage these and see, get it all back online. Now this is a common thing. You see the autopilot is beeping. Now that I have set the autopilot, now that I've reset everything, the autopilot doesn't like things being turned on and off in flight. So now that the airplane is all back running again, it's happy. So and the autopilot's back on. It's in roll mode, so it's not in any, it's just wing level pitch mode. So, and it's climbing right now, so let me tell it to go back down to 4,500. So I'll do a 400 foot a minute descent, and we will descend down. Other failures that we could have. There aren't really a whole lot of other failures in this particular airplane that I could display to you. But we could have the G5 fail, but if the G5 failed, nothing else is going to be affected. And the G5 is the least likely thing to fail. I could have all the radios. Say, okay, this would be one that we could do. Say, let's say the avionics goes bad. So now, if I turn the avionics switch off, which would indicate maybe a loose wire on the avionics wiring, a bad switch, something shorted out, it could have something to do there. If that happened, the autopilot will turn off, and we'll probably have some other functionality on the main displays go bad. But let's just see what happens. All right, so we lost audio because I turned all the audio off. So that obviously wasn't happy. And I'll get my autopilot back on, and we'll get it descending again. And we'll do heading mode and just get turned a little bit more here. All right. So, but as I was showing on the screen, nothing really happened bad on the main screens. So pretty neat in that aspect. The equipment is pretty redundant. Again, your weakest links are going to be the battery and the charging system. So if you fly around with a 5-year-old battery, then and you lose your generator or your alternator, then you might have some issues. If you have a fresh battery, you maintain your charging system, you have a quality installation that doesn't have any wiring gremlins, really not a whole lot to worry about with the system.
Thanks for watching.